Luke chapter 21, we'll begin, actually with verse 35, but if you recall last week, we're going to wrap up this morning, hopefully Luke chapter 21. We spent several weeks on Luke chapter 21. We went back to Daniel chapter 9 and looked at that prophecy there. Discussing here, of course, the destruction of Jerusalem, the temple, and of course, the entire Jewish nation as a whole. And I've taught that this entire Luke chapter 21 is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. In my opinion, and of course I can be wrong about a lot of things, nowhere in here does it discuss the second coming of Christ. And if we have time at the conclusion of the class, we'll sort of make a review of that. But last week we talked about verse 34. Jesus is talking to four apostles that we know of. Mark chapter 3 and verse 13 says that Peter and Andrew and James and John came to Jesus on the Mount of Olives, asking a question about when is the destruction of this temple going to occur. And he's done some extensive explaining here to them. First of all, told them when it would not be. We'll discuss that also at the conclusion of the class. But he tells them in verse 34 there to take heed to yourselves now, and lest at any time you become overcome with the cares of this life. Jesus had just explained to these apostles now there's a coming destruction of this entire city of Jerusalem. And don't forget that. And you'd think that, well, they wouldn't forget that. But we noticed last week from Deuteronomy that Moses told the same people of the nation of Israel, don't forget the things that you've seen. Remember the mountain that you saw on fire? You heard the voice of God speaking to you. And he told them, you're liable to forget that. How would people forget that? Well, we become so busy in life. Have I completely forgotten it? No, but it's not at the forefront of my mind anymore. It's still there, but it's not that important to me anymore. We sometimes get caught up with the cares of this life, and we forget what's really important to us or what should be important to us in our life. But now notice verse 35. Jesus talking to these apostles, at least four apostles, verse 35, well, let's read down to the end of the chapter. For as a snare shall it come upon all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. And in the daytime he was teaching in the temple, and at night he went out and abode in the mount that is called the Mount of Olives. And all the people came early in the morning to him in the temple for to hear him. Now backing up to verse 35, as he talks about, becoming entangled in the cares of this life. And forgetting what you've been warned about. And of course, the lesson for us there is we've been warned about a coming event in our life. There's coming a time when Christ will come again. We'll all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. And I need to keep that in my mind. I need to stay focused on that and not become, for myself, overcome with the things of life. And that's what many of us, myself included, sometimes we do that. We get involved with things that we like to get involved with, and we forget about what's important. But verse 35, he tells these apostles, still talking to us today, as a snare, it'll come on all them that dwell on the face of the earth. As a snare, as a trap, and don't forget what you've been warned about. Don't allow yourself to become so distracted that you just completely slip your mind. You're going to find yourself in a trap, something that you weren't looking for. And what's that saying? Sin takes us farther than we.
Sin takes you further than you want to go.
It'll take you further than you want to go. Didn't know I was going to end up there. I was just going to go this far.
Each step of the way gets easier.
And that's true.
Each day you move away from the Lord, it gets easier to forget Him.
That's true. I completely forgot Him. I've just moved over yonder somewhere, but I still know the Lord.
The cares of this world has choked out.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, and that's the problem. And that was the problem with these people that were facing physical destruction. He's telling them, be prepared for this. Get yourself prepared. And don't forget about it. But, there are people too, and they look like me. They forget. You end up in a snare and a trap that you weren't looking for. In it before you know it, Edgar, you still got your hog trap?
I was just thinking that.
Okay. Edgar's got a hog trap. He sprinkles corn around it, and them hogs, they just eat up all that corn till they go right in the door. They weren't looking for that. And sometimes, you know, I don't mean to say that we're like a bunch of hogs, but sometimes we are, Brenda. We just ignore the warnings. And when we become involved in this snare, this trap, well, it's too late. It's too late, you know.
You know, from verse 34, in the context of verse 34, he says, they will come unexpectedly. They don't expect you.
No.
And I mean, in the context of this chapter, he had warned them, when the destruction of Jerusalem occurs, pray that you're outside the city. Mm-hmm. You'd be better off in the hill country, mm-hmm. because it's going to be bad in Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. When the Roman Empire destroys it, be prepared for it.
Yes.
And if they weren't ready for it, they're going to be caught. It's too late.
Absolutely. If you're outside of town, don't run to town. You know, head for the hills.
That's like we tell you, we got a class 5 hurricane coming, and Ricky says, oh, it won't come to Vernon Parish. Mm-hmm. And he says on Cay Hill. Yeah. And when it hits his house, I got to come cut him out of the tree because he's too stupid to leave.
Same thing. You know,
they get come unexpected. It won't happen to me. It won't happen to us.
Well, I ignored the warning.
You ignored the warning.
Yeah.
And therefore you put yourself in danger and those that you love in danger.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's
and I think spiritually speaking, we do much say that we ignore the warnings of God.
Yes, we do. When do we forget? Totally? No, not totally.
Oh,
yeah, I forgot.
We remember when we tell it, you know.
Yeah, when it came upon me unexpectedly, and I found myself over there. Well, I didn't mean to go that far, but here I am.
You remember? It's been several years when Vernon Lake was about to break. They had to dam the pier.
Yeah.
And they called all of us together. We had to evacuate everything from south of Levee, whatever. You don't know how many people's doors we knocked on in this community. They said, you better leave. Oh, we're not going, ain't going nowhere.
Some didn't want to go. No, but thankfully it didn't break. Just ignore the warning. Or the steel traps and snares for us today. He's talking about a physical snare trap that they might be caught in this destruction. Spiritual snares and traps today. Notice 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 7. This is talking about the qualifications for an elder. You wouldn't think that somebody that might be qualified for an elder, he's not going to be caught in a snare or a trap. 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 7, he must have a good report of them which are without, lest he fall into the reproach and the snare of the devil. Even an elder, a preacher could do that. Yeah, we see that very common. Sir? That's true, yeah. Is the devil after those he don't have? Especially, yeah. That's the ones that he's going after. Hopefully he doesn't have me, but if he don't, he's working on me right now today, and he's working on every one of us. Notice 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 9. We're talking about Christians here today, talking about us today. 1 Timothy 6 and verse 9, those that will be rich are going to fall into temptation and a snare. I've devoted my life to becoming rich. I'm going after everything that I can go after. I'm working 2 or 3 jobs to become rich, and I'm going to fall into a snare or a trap. I'm going to find myself in foolish and hurtful lust, and I'm going to be drowning in destruction and perdition. And I didn't even know I was doing that until I found myself in that condition. We want to be rich, but we become foolish in our pursuit of riches.
I fear many times it's too little too late.
Yeah, and as young people, we think we need to provide for our family, and we do, or at least that's what it used to be. And we tried hard. Did we ever get rich, Edgar? No, we just worked for a living, and the Lord provided for us. And thankfully, those days are behind me, at least. But at any rate, no, I didn't set out to get rich, and I didn't succeed. Did not succeed, but the Lord blessed us anyway. 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 26, this is talking about people who have fallen away. Pray for them that they might recover themselves out of the snare of the devil. They went so far from the Lord didn't leave them, they left the Lord, went so far that they become trapped in the snare of the devil. Pray for them that they can recover from that. Notice 2 Peter chapter 2. 2 Peter chapter 2, what happens to us as members of the church, as Christians now, when we get caught up in the snare of the devil. 2 Peter chapter 2, I can turn that page one more time. Verse 20, for if after they have escaped the pollutions of the world, by the knowledge of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and then they're become entangled again therein in them, that they've entangled in this snare, this trap, and they're overcome by it. The latter end is worse with them than the beginning, for it had been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness. Sort of reminds me of Hebrews chapter 6, and we often refer to it, haven't had done so lately, but Hebrews chapter 6, it is impossible, talking about members of the church, it is impossible to get them to repent when they fall away, to renew them again to repentance. Impossible because they didn't know that they'd gone that far. Impossible because they, I've gone this far and I just, I've sort of given up. And I had a door slammed in her face here a few months ago by a member of the church who said, I am not at all interested. Impossible to get them to change. Impossible to get them to come back because they've gone so far in their lives that they're apparently just given up. Now notice as we go back to Luke chapter 21, verse 36 now, still talking to these apostles, watch ye therefore and pray always that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. Watch therefore. How much do we need to watch? How often do we need to watch?
All the time.
Really? Yeah, always. No, notice what he says there. Watch therefore and pray always. Watch and pray always. Watch always. Pray always. Be always prepared. We can go to the parable of the 10 virgins, but we all know the meaning of that parable. Half of them were prepared and half of them were not. But watch and pray always. Be prepared for these coming events, in order that you might notice what he says here, and you might be counted worthy to escape all these things that are going to happen. All the things that he had talked about that's going to happen to the city of Jerusalem and the temple and the nation of Israel, that you can escape, get away with your lives. Notice he said that you can be accounted worthy, viewed as being worthy to escape all these things. Who's going to count him being worthy?
Let me muddy the water a little bit, just the way I was thinking. The Lord takes care of the faithful. He always has.
Yes, he does.
And in AD 70, when they came into Jerusalem to destroy it, I think God provided those that was worthy an extra measure of protection and or help in his providential care.
Well, Matthew 24 tells us the days will be shortened because of the elect.
And I think that's what he's saying here in this context when he says that you can be counted worthy to escape. Mm-hmm. Be among the faithful, be among the expectant, be among those that's looking for the covenant of the kingdom, those when the Son of God shall, when Israel will be destroyed and God's kingdom will once again be established in its entirety. Mm-hmm. I think God takes care of the faithful.
I know he absolutely does. He's taking care of me. And sometimes I wonder why he did.
Because he cares for you.
Yeah.
We sometimes don't. We don't follow that passage.
No. No. But let's see. But notice what we'll get just a little bit ahead here. That you don't need to stand before the Son of God, Son of Man. Would the Lord need to preserve a remnant of Christians? The days are going to be shortened because of for the elect's sake there in Jerusalem. It'd be advantageous to preserve, to save some of them from this physical destruction so they can continue to teach and preach.
In that sense, yes.
Yes. Is that referring to the second coming of Christ?
No.
Okay. We'll get there in a minute.
In the second coming of Christ, there will be no more. There will be no more teaching. No. There will be no more evangelism. There will be no more need for that. Mm-hmm. There will be no need for the remnant to be there because of the entire body of Christ, the elect and the saved, will be standing for him in heaven. Mm-hmm. But these are going to escape.
There'll be no escaping either.
Sir?
There'll be no escaping.
That day, no, there will be, and that's a good point. Yeah, and that sort of proves to me that he's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. You can escape this physical destruction. I'm going to escape the day of judgment. No need for me to pray that I can escape the day of judgment. No. No, but I think that's what he's talking about here. Even when, and we'll talk about this standing before the Son of Man here in just a few minutes. But of course, God is the one who's going to view them as being worthy. God, through His grace and His mercy, is going to protect them from this destruction of being that's coming. Am I worthy? Are we worthy today? We worthy? I'm worthy of salvation. I mean, I've earned it, Brenda.
You haven't earned it. You've been granted salvation.
Okay.
And in that sense, you're worthy of it.
Okay. Well, yeah, but I mean, I've done so much good, Andy, till I've earned it. No. Through God's mercy and through His grace, I haven't earned salvation. I haven't earned God's mercy. I don't deserve God's grace. And we've had some good lessons on God's grace. You know, when I was a kid growing up, I don't remember talking about God's grace.
God's grace is that which makes us worthy.
Yes.
God's mercy is that which extends to us the opportunity for grace.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, you're saved by grace and mercy through faith.
Yes, through my faith. Absolutely. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 8. Yeah. But you know, in order for me to be worthy, I need to recognize that I'm unworthy. I'm not deserving of anything that the Lord would grant me His mercy and His grace. And you know, we need to recognize that we are sinful people.
Well, I think Paul said it best. He said, when I've done all that I can possibly do, I'm still chiefest among sinners. And I'm kind of worthy, you know.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, you know. But these folks, Jesus is warning, they need to be seen by the Lord as being worthy of serving or being saved from this physical destruction. You and I need to be seen by the Lord as worthy of being saved from our spiritual destruction. Notice, go back with me to Luke chapter 20. Remember that they came to Jesus and asked Him about this woman who had married the 7 brothers, and then in the kingdom of heaven, whose wife is she going to be? Notice verse 34. Jesus says, the children of this world marry. People in this life here, we all marry. Verse 35, but they which shall be accounted worthy to obtain that world. In that world that's coming, I have to be judged worthy by the Lord Himself. But of course, again, there's no way that I can work enough and do enough good to be counted worthy because of simply what I've done. But in order for these folks to escape this coming destruction, they needed to watch and pray. Notice 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Notice what the Apostle Paul and Randy just referred to him here. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, notice what the Apostle Paul here says about himself. You know, Paul was probably worthy. Well, 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 27. Paul says about himself, you know, I keep under my body and I bring it into subjection. I discipline myself. Paul says about himself that the life that he lives, I have to discipline myself. I keep my body and bring it into subjection, the life that I live. Notice why, lest by any means, just because I preach to others, I myself should be lost. You know, if Paul could be lost, where does that leave somebody like me? Paul could be lost if he didn't discipline himself. Do I need to watch myself? Do I need to discipline myself to keep myself under control? You know, I would say so. If I don't do that, I could be unworthy. If Paul didn't do that, he could be wound up unworthy, even though he had spent his lifetime preaching to other folks. Philippians chapter 3. Philippians chapter 3, notice what the Apostle Paul continues to say about himself, verse 7. You know, what things were gained to me, I counted them lost for Christ. Paul could have had a pretty good life under the Jewish system. He had a good education. You know, he could have made something of himself, but he said, you know, all that stuff that would have been helpful to me, I counted all that lost. Notice verse 11. And I did that if by any means I might obtain the resurrection of the dead. He said back in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, you know, by some means he might be found unworthy, or for some minds he might be but be found to be a castaway. But by whatever it takes in his life, if by any means I might attain to the resurrection of the dead, verse 13, folks, I don't count myself to have apprehended. I ain't got it made. I still have to discipline myself. I have to watch myself every day. We're talking about watching and praying now, because we know what's coming. But I don't count myself to have apprehended. But here's one thing I do. Forget about those things which are behind. All that stuff that he gave up, all that good stuff in his Jewish life that he gave up, forget about it. All those times that he persecuted members of the church and had them put to death, forget about it. There's nothing he can do about that now. He's a changed person, forgetting those things which are behind, and he's reaching forward to the things which are ahead of him there. If by any means that he might attain to the resurrection of life, that he might be able to be accounted worthy. When these folks have been accounted worthy to escape, then they can stand before the Son of God. Now, what does that mean? That's the second coming. Okay, and I agree, Andy. I still don't think he's talking about the second coming of Christ in any of this.
When you have overcome the persecution, the hardship, the upcoming battle, whatever you want to call it, you will still be counted worthy to stand in God's kingdom as one of his children, as one of his citizens.
Okay, in the coming kingdom.
In the kingdom that's there, you know, the church is in existence before AD 70.
Yes.
But it was not in its entirety. It was still under persecution. Israel was still causing problems and Jewish persecutions. And even under the rule of Domitian in the 90 ADs, there were still problems. But he said, you will be counted worthy to stand as one of God's children.
Yes, I agree. I agree, but I'll take that even further. Again, we know he's talking to at least 4 apostles. These 4 apostles that are going to go out and begin to teach and preach after Jesus ascends into heaven, after they're filled with the Holy Spirit on the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2. They're going to go out to teach and to preach. They're going to represent this gospel of Christ. You know, two things are going to result in their watching and praying. First of all, they're going to escape this destruction. And secondly, they're going to be able to stand, remain standing, and serving the Son of God. Teaching and preaching, carrying the gospel of Christ. Even though Jesus has ascended into heaven, they're going to stand and preach the gospel of Christ. Now, notice Ephesians chapter 6. Are we supposed to stand today and teach and preach the gospel of Christ? Maybe by the lives that we live? Ephesians chapter 6, verse... but we'll begin in verse 10. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. Notice, in order to do that, put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. We can resist the devil. We need to be able to resist the devil by the whole armor of God. Verse 12, you know, the difference between us and them, well, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. They're fixed to be in combat, in battle with over their flesh and their blood, the destruction of Jerusalem. Our struggle today is not with flesh and blood, but it's against principalities and powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Because that's true, take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. You know, I think the analogy that there is that these folks are going to go through this great trial here, and they're going to continue to stand and serve the Lord and preach the gospel of Christ, praying always and watching always, that they can be able to withstand the devil and to stand and serve God. That's what you and I are supposed to be doing today. But we have to watch and we have to pray. You know, because these days are going to be shortened, they're going to be viewed as being worthy to serve and to continue to serve God, and to spread the gospel of Christ among those people who are left there after this great destruction. Anyone have any comment about that? Notice the last 2 verses, verse 37. In the daytime he was teaching in the temple, and at night he went out and abode in the mount that is called the Mount of Olives. He taught in the temple every day. Remember, this is a result. Remember Jesus' triumphal, as we call it, his triumphal entry into Jerusalem, and back in Luke chapter 19, he rode in on the back of a donkey. He went to the temple when he got there. Luke chapter 19, verse 45 and verse 47 says that he went straight to the temple. He'd been teaching in the temple every day. This is just a day or two now, but before his arrest and his trial and his crucifixion and his death on the cross. He's teaching in the temple every day. Do you think that he knows what he's teaching there is going to make these folks even more angry at him? It's going to upset them even more. They don't like what he's teaching. He knows what he's in Jerusalem for. He knows that he's going to be arrested and crucified. I'd have probably went and hid, Andy, Self-preservation.
What was the question? Did Jesus know they were going to aggravate the people?
Yes, aggravate the Pharisees and scribes.
I think so.
Yeah. Did it make any difference?
No.
No. He taught in the temple every day. Every day. He'd be there in the temple every day, knowing that what he was teaching, knowing that these people were looking for something that they might accuse him of teaching. Were you going to say something? But at night now he would go out to the Mount of Olives. Every night he would leave Jerusalem. Remember on our board we had that little drawing, and hopefully it's gone. But anyway, he would have to go down the side of the mountain, the hill, cross the Kidron Valley, cross the Kidron Creek, as we would call it today, and go up the other side of the hill to the Mount of Olives. That's where Jesus often went. Notice Luke chapter 22 and verse 39. My pages are stuck together this morning. Luke chapter 22 and verse 39, and he came out and went as he was wont, or as he was occasioned to, the Mount of Olives. How did you feast? How Judas knows where he was? He weren't with them. John chapter 18 and verse 2 tells us that Judas knew exactly where to go. Well, that's where he always went, out to the Mount of Olives. It's only a mile or two away from the Mount of Olives. Some versions say, Matthew 21 tells us that they would go to Bethany. Bethany is a small town located on the Mount of Olives. Luke chapter 19 said that Simon the leper lived there. That's where Mary and Martha and Lazarus lived, was in Bethany. Did he go and sleep under an olive tree, or did he go to somebody's house? Well, who knows? He went to the Mount of Olives every night. Keep in mind, Jerusalem's crowded. This is the Passover. A lot of folks in Jerusalem now. Maybe there was no room at the inn. And when Jesus was born in Bethlehem, there was no room at the inn. Maybe there's no room at the inn now because there's so many people there. Notice verse 38. And all the people came early in the morning. People showed up early in the morning. Andy, don't you think we're meeting too early already?
Notice what he said. They came or showed up early in the morning to meet him. To see him.
To hear him, mine.
To hear. Well,
Yeah.
They came because of who Jesus was, and to hear what he had to say.
He was an eloquent speaker, though, now, Andy. Probably not. But,
he was a Nazarite. He was a boy from Nazareth.
Yeah. Uneducated, carpenter's son. Was he an eloquent speaker? Probably better than me. We hope he's better than me.
Do all things.
Yeah. But I don't know. They didn't show up early in the morning to hear this eloquent speaker. I can't think of one person except for Andy now. I'd show up early in the morning to hear Andy, wouldn't you, Edgar? Come on. But they showed up early in the morning. Jesus came early too. If you go back to Matthew chapter 21, when Jesus was leaving Bethany, going to Jerusalem now, again, remember he came to the fig tree? He was hungry and he came to the fig tree. He left home without eating breakfast. And I'm going to get me a handful of figs, Brenda, for breakfast. I don't want none. I'd rather have my oatmeal at home. But he left whoever's house that he was at without eating breakfast. He didn't get no breakfast. these people, they're showing up early because they've understood there was a free breakfast. No, they probably didn't get nothing to eat either. Were these folks hungry and thirsting after righteousness?
That's the
After
reason
chapter
they were
5,
there.
sir?
That's the reason they were there.
Yeah, I think so.
They came out of a thirst for knowledge of spiritual matters concerning the house of Israel
Mm-hmm.
in simple.
Mm-hmm. But you know, Andy, you want us to show up here at 9:45 on a Sunday morning? 9:45.
Let's make it even more important. And they came daily to the temple. Let's do it in the morning at 9:45, and Tuesday morning at 9, and Wednesday morning we'll get up early and be here by 7. Let's come every day this week.
Well, Andy, you know, we're assembled here on the Sunday morning, first day of the week. We met the commandment. Do we have to come back tonight? Do we have to come back tonight?
Well, you didn't have to be here this week.
How hungry am I?
There you go. Thank you.
How hungry am I? Will I be back tonight? Will I come back Wednesday night? We're going to still hear we don't have this eloquent speaker, but we're hearing we're going to study his words, what he's said to these other folks, and they apply to me. But you know, I got to have breakfast. Everybody's got to have breakfast. And for me to get here early in the morning, that means I got to get up earlier, Edgar, and eat breakfast. You know, we stayed up late last night. And we just, you know, we have a hard time getting up here.
He must not only because we're hungry, but we're Hebrews 10:25 to encourage others also.
Yeah. You know, I'm encouraged by the group that shows up here on Sunday morning for a Bible class. The rest of the group will be here after a while. And maybe they don't need this. I don't know. You know, we got to eat breakfast, and then we got to eat dinner. We got to get dinner on the stove, and so I'll get there sometime. But maybe we should shove it back till 1 o'clock after lunch. Well, you think people would show up then? No.
I got
No.
after lunch nap then.
we got to have a nap on Sunday evening, especially when we get our age. But no, these people showed up early in the morning. That's what it says. They were hungering and thirsting after righteousness. They wanted to hear this. You know, they were good, honest folks who wanted to hear God's word, and so they got up and came early. They knew to get up and go early. Well, sure is hard to tear yourself out of that bed. And Edgar, since this time changed, I'm just getting slower and slower. Get up. Just get up. Just get up. All we got to do is get up and get there. But I'm afraid sometimes we just struggle. We become involved with the cares of this life, and we forgot about what's coming for us, and so we're distracted with other things, and so we become like all these other folks. We just forget about all that and don't make that big of an effort. Anyone have any comment?
That all has to start back like at verse 34. Don't be take heed lest your hearts be over.
Yeah. So where's my big interest? Where's my big interest?
I want to notice something. I know we're almost out of time at the end of the chapter. Where was Jesus teaching at?
Where was he teaching at? He was at the temple in Jerusalem.
Why did he stop outside the temple?
Why did he not stop?
Why did he stop out on the street corner and outside the temple?
Well, because there would be people at the temple that did crowd.
Those are religious people. You know, they're not Christians. We can't go associate with them. We can't go to their temple. They got to come to us.
Well, no, that's not true. You know, Jesus associated with sinners.
Oh, he did.
He ate with sinners.
He did.
He did. Yeah, he did.
You see the point I'm making?
Yes, I do.
He went to the religious people to teach them religious truths, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
He wasn't afraid to go to the temple where he knew they would be aggravated at him or difficult audience. But he went anyway to where the crowd was willing to listen to him.
Yes.
And I think that's a lesson for us today. That we have to go to the people that wants to study and teach them.
Go into all the world.
That includes the temple.
Yeah, that goes anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere. But, you know, if they would come here, we would teach them. If they come here, we would teach them.
Blessed the devil
You know-
worry about the old sinner?
Sir?
Says, does the devil worry about the old sinner?
No.
He worries about the money he hasn't got.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes I think we maybe get it reversed or something, but at any rate, anyone have any comment? But a little bit of summation. You know, if you look at Matthew chapter 24, Mark chapter 13, and Luke chapter 21, all three of those teach essentially the same thing that we've been studying here in Luke chapter 21. Jesus began to answer these apostles' question, you know, when's this going to happen? What will be the sign of it happening? And he begins to tell them what won't be the sign. And as a child growing up, Edgar, Brenda, y'all probably remember this, you'd hear old people sitting around, you know, there's an earthquake just happened over there, and there's a war over yonder, and they would just comment, well, that's a sign of the coming of the end. Wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes. Jesus told them specifically in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 9, that has nothing to do with the coming of the end of the world. That's always going to go on. It's still going on today. But old folks, and I remember that vividly, well, that's a sign that the end of the world is close. There's wars and rumors of wars and these earthquakes. Jesus says, no, that's not it.
Well, you know, I mean, you think about today, I had a conversation this week with a man. The Israel and Palestinian Gaza Strip, this is fulfilling a prophecy and it's coming.
Yeah.
This kind of discussion has been going on since all time.
Yep.
We're seeing in this context, in AD 70, you're seeing the nation of Israel destroyed. So the biblical Israel ended.
Yes.
The Israel
That was
today
the purpose.
The Israel today is not, has not, cannot, and will not be the Israel of the New Testament.
No. They don't have priests.
I made that statement this week, and there were some people heard me say that, and they really, you know.
I'm sure.
Oh, it's Israel. The Israel of the New Testament ended in AD 70.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the Roman Empire destroyed the nation of Israel as we know it in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a sector there 26 today, but it's not this one.
No. And I agree. Understood, misquoted, you know, and I understand that. There's some things here. You know, the sun and the stars and the moon are going to fall out of the sky. And they're going to see the Son of Man coming on in the clouds of glory. And all of that is symbolic language. You know, Matthew chapter 24, verse 29, he says, immediately after this tribulation, you're going to see the sun and the moon and stars fall out of the sky. Immediately after this tribulation. Mark 13, 24, in those days after this tribulation. There's this generation will not pass away until all these things happen. And all those things happened. You know, Jesus inserts those two things about the sun and the moon and the stars and the Son of the Man coming on high directly after what he's talking about, the destruction of Jerusalem. And after he says those two things, he begins again to talk about the destruction of Jerusalem. I think those things are symbolic. The destruction is going to be so great that they've never seen it before, nor will they ever see it again. These people are going to be so terrified and traumatized that they think the sky is falling in on them, and the Lord has abandoned them. They're going to be in a terrible state. You know, the parable of the fig tree is showing that all these things are not far off, and all three, Matthew 24, Mark chapter 13, Luke chapter 21, all refer to the parable of the fig tree. And so it's my belief that all of that is talking about the destruction of the nation of Israel, Jerusalem, and the temple. Those things, the sun, moon, and the stars, and you know, do not coincide with what's described in the second coming of Christ. I think it's symbolic. I think it relates strictly to what is happening, what he has just described for all these things. What preceded and what followed, what Jesus said there about the sun and the moon, the stars, and the Son of Man coming refers, I think, to the destruction of Jerusalem, as does the entirety of Matthew 24, chapter 21. Study it for yourself. Does it really matter? Is my salvation going to depend on whether that was it or not? No, I don't think so. I don't want to teach it wrong, though. I don't want to teach it wrong. I'm a firm believer in keep it within the context of what he's talking about there in its entirety. And it's my belief that it all relates to the destruction of Jerusalem. Thank you for your help this morning. Next week, Luke chapter 22. We are moving on, Andy. We've been several weeks in Luke chapter 21, and I appreciate your patience with me there. But I think that we've had a good study, and I appreciate your help this morning.